All right, Joe. It looks like we've got some folks starting to file in, ready for your masterclass. I know I'm excited. So we'll give it a few minutes while we get things published and live to our various social channels and groups. But in the meantime, I'd love to maybe just do a little sound check with our audience. Let's make sure that the chat and Q&A is enabled for everyone. If y'all wouldn't mind just chatting. Hey, Justin, good to see you. Let us know where you're calling in from or tuning in from. We'd love to hear that as well. Joe, how are you today?
I'm good, man. It's been a fun week, busy week, but I'm great nonetheless. Yeah.
Busy preparing for this masterclass, huh? A few coaches to keep, or a few clients to keep in line as well.
I think we have probably 30 to 40 teams attending this one. So a lot of the clients will see us today.
Yeah. I know we had some good results for registrants. It's going to be an immensely valuable session. I know that we've been working hard on the CSU side to kind of portray that and a little bit of what we're going to be talking about there. And I know that our co-sponsors, WiseHire, have been trying to get the word out too. And just a bit of background for those of you tuning in. My name is Mac Hill, by the way. I'm the director of community at CSU. I know we've got a lot of the WiseHire community tuning in and probably a lot of your people as well, Joe. I feel fortunate that a mutual client of ours introduced us, Mark Pattison. And, I'm a big fan of social proof, being a community builder and seeing people that have had success with a program, or in your case, coaching. And Mark is obviously, a clear success story, right? He's done exceptionally well, grown a massive business. So when he connected us, I was like, I'd love to learn what is Joe doing to help drive the success with Mark? What can we do to extract some of the things that you're coaching and teaching to Mark and share with our CSU community? Because I'm a firm believer of leading with value, right? So we started talking, Joe, and we wanted to figure out how we could, maybe get a masterclass put together, because you've got a pretty comprehensive framework, very dialed in process that you guide your teams through to help them grow and scale. And, we felt like we needed to get WiseHire involved because they're a big part of that as well. So I just want to say that I'm thankful for you taking time out of your exceptionally busy schedule to host this complimentary masterclass for our audience here. It looks like Jeff might be hearing someone talking in the background as well. Apologize about that. We've got all sorts of people tuning in from across the US, Joe. I love to see it. Awesome, gang. So a little bit about how this will work. Myself and Francis, my colleague, are behind the scenes helping to answer questions, but ultimately this masterclass, all about the Casper method, a framework for driving predictable growth in 2023, is going to be led by our main man, Joe here, Coach Joe. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe. But if y'all have any questions, queue them up in the chat or the Q&A. And, kind of between the different sections or chapters, whatever you want to refer to it as, we'll be happy to queue those up for you, Joe, because we're going to try and stump you a little bit with some of this content you're presenting. But we're super excited. Thank you again, Joe. And without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Joe.
I love that intro. And I appreciate all of the time and attention that we've been putting in to make sure that this was leading with value. And I know that was how we resonated so well, is because we've been so focused on value first and everything else comes next. And so I appreciate you, and I appreciate WiseHire for actually being a part of it, because you guys both represent platforms that are integral to a lot of the results that we create. And so we're so focused on growth. We're so focused on clarity. And so I love that both companies were able to join us and be a part of that. Without further ado, I'll give a little intro of myself. However, I do want to share my screen. Do I have permission?
You should indeed. Let's see.
I do.
There we go.
We've got it. And awesome. So this whole idea started, and you'll see what Casper means. It was funny. I was having a conversation with a client, and one of them thought that I just had a client named Casper who was really good at recruiting. and I just somehow documented his way of doing it. However, Casper is an acronym. It's a way that I developed doing things, and I'll share with you why I came to it at this point. Now, I want to make sure you relate. I don't ever want to offer information that you feel doesn't speak to where you're at in the business or where you're moving towards. And so if you can relate to any of these, then we can assure you're in the right place. If you've been to dozens of trainings and you still don't feel like you have full clarity on how to take charge of your growth and actually get results for the agents you bring on, or if you have a business that you know can change people's lives, you've developed a good business for yourself, however, not enough people are seeing it and wanting to become a part of it, or you're missing out on a chance to build the business that you've always wanted to build, and you just have too much on your plate to be able to do that. And many of you probably feel that you're in the same position at the end of the year as you were at the beginning of the year. We've heard that time and time again. So if any of those relate to you, then you are in the right place. And so there's three things I'm looking at. One is I want you to be able to say, I know exactly how to stand out in my market and build the business that I deserve. Two is I know exactly how to help someone find their gaps and see how I can help them. And three is I have the exact structure I need to help my team grow without getting overwhelmed. My goal is that you can say those, not 100% confidence after. However, you can say those confidently enough to where we know we made an impact and added value. And so my goal is that you have increased confidence, consistency, and ideally create some cash from the activities that we can identify here. And so that leads me to this method, this idea, this framework of proven predictable growth. Before I tell you what it is, I want to reference a couple people. Everything we do or talk about, we've already been doing with other people and have seen success with it. So you mentioned one client, right, that was able to introduce us, Mark Pattison, and we're seeing successes throughout. I think just with Mark Pattison's friends, I think we work with around 7 or 8. There was something that we looked at this year when everyone was talking about a down market. We started looking at what were the results that they were getting this year and how did they stand out. And these were 3 examples of people that had a best month ever in their entire career in this year. And this wasn't the only one. And so we started seeing more and more. And for the sake of time, I didn't mention Kyle Draper, who had his best month ever in Los Angeles, or Tanner and Terry in Florida, the #1 small team, who just started growing a team and I believe have 12 agents in the last 30 days. And so we're seeing a lot of this stuff happening. And the reason is because there's 2 things across the board. 1 is clarity and 2 is direction. And as soon as we can identify what that looks like, you'll see how it becomes very predictable. And so here's how I fit within it. I'm a firm believer of the first part where success loves speed. Now, when you talk about speed, there's 2 things that are critical to growth. 1 is motivation and 2 is urgency. And when you combine motivation and urgency, that's when you start to get results sooner. Now, my past led me to where I'm at today. So I actually started selling in real estate in San Diego, which is where I'm at now. I believe you can see the background. You'll probably see a plane or 2 fly by. And so I used to lead a big brokerage here. And then I led one of the largest brokerages for the entire company that I was with when I went to Beverly Hills. Now, while I was there, within both of these, I ended up recruiting around 250 agents through around 500 appointments. And so from there, I was able to see what was working, what wasn't working, and you can see the conversion rate on those. It was a strong conversion rate because of the fact that there were certain things common across the board that I saw with recruiting that allowed you to become more predictable, to help them identify gaps, and to show how you're the solution. As of today, we coach around 300 plus professionals across 7 states and Canada. And so my goal is to cover these 3 things. Number 1, how to create engaging content that will get your audience to interact with it. If it's not engaging, it's probably not working. Number 2 is the 6-step framework for growing your team in a simple and scalable way. And number 3 is how to set up your business so that it has a performance-based culture. Now, Mac, I'll call on you just to confirm, with what we're sharing here, does this hit your audience well.
Yeah, absolutely. What I've been hearing, consistently over the past few months as the market has become more challenging, which I think we can all agree is the case, is that recruiting is becoming a big emphasis, right? Agents are starting to question the value, the training, what they're getting from their current team or brokerage. And the strong, we feel, are really going to be able to effectively communicate what you're talking about. What is the value proposition of their organization? How are they getting that message out? And then how are they bringing these people in, bringing their production up and keeping them in the organization longer? So it aligns really well with what we coach and train at Sisu too, which is why, I felt like this was such a great partnership and opportunity to get you involved with our audience, Joe.
Perfect. And I know we discussed certain things, and hopefully we nailed this together. So I'm excited to actually dig in. If you know anything about me, you know that I am not a fan of options. I am merely a fan of solutions. And if it's not detailed enough, I'm not a fan of it. And so everything I do hopefully will come off as detail oriented and as proven. So we try to avoid anything theoretical. Now, to give you an idea, our methodology within coaching kind of sets the framework for everything we do and we talk about. And so what you probably know in the real estate industry, whether you go to events or trainings or anything like that, it often becomes a series of getting like little nuggets of information. And you get a nugget here and you get something here and here. And oftentimes it's really hard to connect the dots. And so what we started doing and how we developed as a brand was we separated the business into a series of 7 levels. And within each level is a completely different strategy, set of systems, frameworks, ways of support, et cetera. And so my goal is that you identify which level you're at. And then from there, it becomes easier to understand where you need to go. When we identify business planning or anything like that, it's not throwing a number out there. It's looking at how do I get out of this level and move to the next one, which involves completely different sets of strategies. And so if you're level 1, you're just starting the business. Now you're doing 0 to 10 transactions, 0 to 5 million in volume. And the one we look at most is the one that comes first. So if your average price point is under 500,000, then we're looking at the transactions. If it's over, we're looking at volume. Level 2 is where you start to get a little bit of traction. You're starting to look at your habits a little more. You're probably realizing the need for organization. And so that's level 2. As we get to level 3, you start to feel like a leader. And you don't necessarily feel like a leader in a sense of leading agents or people just like you. You probably realize you're being challenged in a way because you have to lead someone else who's there to support you. And so level 3, a big part of that is hiring admin. Now, level 4 is what we call part of the messy middle. And the messy middle, we consider the hardest one of all. You're juggling personal production, you're juggling leading or training your admin, and you're juggling growth and development with a sales team. And so level 4 ends up being one of the largest barriers we see, to where some will hit it and fall back, and some will be able to get over it. Once you get over it, it starts to become easier as long as you did everything right up until then. Level 5 is where it gets a little more fun. And that's where we get to see people really focus on delegation and leverage. And so this is the point where they start to what's called buy their time back. And you start to identify more systems and more ways of support. You've added one more admin, and now you're feeling comfortable in your training and development with your sales team. Then you get to level 6 and level 7, which is where you're identified as a CEO of the business. You're starting to identify more admin, and you realize the power of people. You started with production as the main focus. Then you realize production's great, but without processes, you can't really continue it. And then you realize people are the solution, because systems run the business and people run the systems. And so as long as you get the right systems in place, then it becomes, how do I find the right people? And so we talk about those two things, systems and people. That's exactly why we rely on Sisu and WiseHire. And so you'll start to see the gaps of what we found and why we partner with different people to make those easier. And so there is an art and a science to business. Not only what you do is important, but also how you do it. You can take people doing the same thing, however, they get different results. It's because there is an art and a science to everything you're doing. And the Casper method is my way of creating a proven framework for recruiting experienced agents. When we talk about a market shifting, we're talking about a lot of agents leaving the industry. When you're a team that's starting to grow and you're in a level 4 or level 5, you don't have a lot of time because you're either in the messy middle or you're getting out of the messy middle. And the time commitment to new agents versus experienced agents ends up being a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1. And so that's where we really look at building the skill set of how do you bring on a few experienced agents to add more leverage to the business, to provide extra expertise, and to start to develop the culture and identity of the brand that you feel is going to be your long-term solution. And we look at experienced agents that have a certain amount of market share, and I'll share with you what that looks like. And so Casper is an acronym. Now, an acronym just meaning that each letter stands for a different thing. The C stands for content, and that's creating interesting content using what's called curiosity marketing. That's our focus, is how do you create marketing that builds curiosity with your audience? You can probably think back to whether it's personal relationships or a business, everything started worthwhile because there was a sense of curiosity in the beginning. And so we took that and ran with it. Second is appointment. Appointment is setting up a personal meeting with your ideal prospect. Sounds simple, not as easy. However, we're going to show you how we do it or what works. Number 3 is strategy. Help your prospect find new growth opportunities. We have a 4-part framework, which we'll go over. Number 4 is presentation. And so how you express your value proposition, this is most important as a solution. There's a difference between new and experienced agents, and I'll share with you the need for both. Number 5, or E, is enrollment. Provide consistent value to help the prospect move. And then number 6 is retention. Be a servant leader at least through the first 30 days. And so this is the overall framework for recruiting. You'll see how this all works together. What we found in the industry is that everything almost became checklisted or very direct ways of doing things. When you take a listing, when you start a transaction, when you do anything, there's always specific ways of doing it. However, when you start recruiting experienced agents or recruiting market share or growing through proven experience, it becomes really fuzzy and there's nothing really clean cut. And so that's why this all came about. And so content is the first one. Now, if you have any questions so far, you can ask them in the chat because I'm going to take a little break after content and I'll do my best to answer any questions that you may have, or Matt can answer as well. So content is the thing that starts everything. It's the way you position yourself to your audience. We look at 3 things that you want to embody when you talk about content, especially through social media. Number 1 is your authority, and that's how you position yourself as an expert in the industry. The next is credibility, how convincing and believable you are to your audience. And number 3 is trust, how you build relationships through dialogue and transparency. And now look at these 3 things and think about you. Think about what you put out, or when you're identifying what you want to put out there or what you want to create as engaging content, are you hitting all 3 of these? And if you're missing one, I would say that these 3 are important enough to identify what is that thing I'm not yet doing, and how do I bridge the gap with being a little more strategic and making sure that all 3 of these are covered in all our messaging and marketing. Authority, credibility, and trust together are what's considered our ACT framework, or ACT. You're going to find that I use acronyms for everything because if I can remember it, then I know clients can remember it. And that's always the goal, is to make sure that everything we do can be repeated over time. And so positioning trifecta, use this as a way to audit what you're putting out now and what you need to bridge the gap. This is our favorite philosophy with marketing. And I know my clients are looking at this and they've definitely heard this before. Marketing is the first part. Sales is the second. And we often confuse the order. and make them thirsty. Curiosity marketing in its premise is how well you can make them thirsty. Now, I want you to think about what that actually means. How do you make them want more? How do you make them feel like they're missing out on something? How do you get them excited about the next thing you post or do? And so make them thirsty. Think about whatever you're putting out. Am I making them thirsty, making them want more, making them interested or curious about what else? If you make them thirsty enough, it becomes easier to sell them a drink. That's the easy part. And oftentimes it becomes the hardest because we didn't make them thirsty enough. And so with everything you're doing, everything you're putting out, I want you to ask yourself, am I making my audience thirstier for more? And if you are, it becomes much easier to provide a call to action and sell them a drink. And if you're watching this, I will say, you probably want to take a snapshot of this. And so curiosity marketing at its finest. I wanted to give a few examples so you get tangibles to what this can look like. We look at 5 categories: successes, highlights, agents, recognition, and events. Another acronym, you can probably look at the first letter of each one and see how that looks. Under successes, there's a few things that always shocked me that I never saw. And that was lifetime sales, that was often not calculated or shown. And it's very similar to if you were trying to lose weight, you were showing every single pound lost, almost like every single just sold, but you didn't say, hey, by the way, I lost 30 pounds, or hey, by the way, I've sold 200 homes. And so we get caught in this mundane doing things over and over that we forget to really celebrate what is the overall result. That's the number that always continues growing. In a down market, it's the one number that keeps growing. So oftentimes we forget to share that most important thing because we're so caught in the day-to-day. And so that's something we look at that we make sure we share. The second one is a monthly snapshot. And the monthly snapshot is about sharing 3 things on a monthly basis. And that is your closed, pending, and active. So many times people don't share their results because they have maybe 1 closed or 1 active or whatever. However, if you combine all 3 of those and show them in one carousel, that's when everything starts to make more sense. And it really starts to showcase everything that happened rather than just one metric that you're basing your success on. If we move over and we look at highlights, this is a big one, your monthly lead flow. So this one's proven to work. Whatever lead flow you're getting or you're at, if you can showcase that or share that, that is a big attractor to experienced agents. A lot of them are looking for solutions. And so if you have a way that they can apply to that and you share it almost like behind the scenes, in a sense, raw, unedited, they're more likely to be attracted to that. Also, weekly achievements. If you had a really strong week in a certain metric, make sure you take the time to share that. 4, 5, 6 closings 1 week. Make sure you share that as often as you can. If we look at agents, anytime you get a new agent on, you probably know this, share that always. It does do better to take a picture with the agent and share it. It does get way more engagement to share with you 2 together than it does to just have them in a circle on a post. And so if you have the option to do that, I would say you probably want to take that little extra step. With $1 Million Month, anytime an agent surpasses a million in sales volume for closed in a year or in a month, that's when we share it. So anytime an agent surpasses $1 million in sales volume for a month, you want to be able to share that as entrance into $1 Million Month or however you want to word it. Recognition, one big one we look at is reviews in milestones. And so if your reviews hit 25 total, we share that. If they hit 50 total, we share that. And so we share in milestones of 25, and that's an easy way to build credibility. When we talk about ACT, a lot of recognition is fitting within credibility. And then if we also look at culture awards, anytime you can share something like that about a team member, that recognition, you're speaking to an audience so that they can feel like they're a part of what you're doing or sharing. They feel like they can step into the shoes of the person you're rewarding, and they're probably not getting the amount of celebration that they want. And so this starts to create a little bit of curiosity. And then live events, anytime you can do a pre, during, and post of a live event, maybe you're speaking, maybe you're attending, maybe you're inviting, or a virtual training, that can sometimes generate a lot of curiosity for your audience. With that being said, I wanted to open it up for questions for Mac and I with just the content or what we've shared so far, so I can make sure we're getting value.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff so far. Joe, Chelsea had a just quick comment. This is so cool. And we agree. Love seeing the detailed outline here. I think this type of inspiration is important for anyone, especially, as they try and ramp things up for social promotional purposes. Chelsea specifically asked, if you were to pick out 3 pieces of content to post this week from this list, what would those be?
So there's certain things that will stand out more than others depending on where you're at in your business. If you're a single agent, you're relying a lot on successes or personal recognition through others. And so review milestones, client testimonials, that's a lot of what you're doing. With the agent stuff, that's not as relative. And with highlights, more behind the scenes is your biggest driver. So the more you can share behind the scenes, the more trust you're going to build with your audience. And that's really what you want when you're building a business. If you're an established team, really focus on education. So live events and virtual training, really focus on showcasing growth through agents, because agents always see other agents joining something and that builds curiosity. And then if you can create successes on a large scale. And so the lifetime sales, if you're established, you've been around for a while and you're surpassing 200, 300 million, those are the things you really want to capitalize on. And always go back to that and make sure that you're updating that as you go in milestones of 25.
Awesome. Scott was looking for a little clarity around what was matched last year under successes.
So match last year is if last year you did 57 million, this year in October, you hit 57 million, then I would share that comparing this year to last year that you just surpassed your last year. And so that's one of the ones we look at to showcase growth.
Love it. And then he's also wondering if there are any examples or ideas of what behind the scenes looks like.
So if we did examples for everything, this would be a four-day trading. There are examples. If you just want to send me a DM, I'll just send you specific clients and you can see their examples. It's funny because oftentimes on calls, clients see other clients based on the stuff they're posting because they're following similar methodologies. And so I would say if you want specific ones, just shoot me a DM and I'll just send you a few profiles and you can see exactly what it looks like.
Awesome. Yolanda asked, what are the best places, platforms to get engaging content? So I'm guessing, Yolanda, like Instagram, Facebook, but I'll defer to you, Joe.
So everyone has their own idea. If we're merely looking at ROI and your ideal audience is, I would say, over 45, I would say Facebook ends up being the one that we get a stronger attraction. If audience is under 45, then we look at Instagram being the stronger one in terms of ROI. Those are the two that allow for more calls to action because they allow for communication directly on the platform. Your goal with creating engagement marketing is actually to have a way to engage with them beyond the marketing. And so a lot of times, if there isn't a way to do that, like Facebook DMs or Instagram, then it's not really doing what it can do. And so the two that we see the best are usually going to be Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see a few more, and then we can keep going forward. Mark asked, when you say share, where are you sharing? I think we just covered that. Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, you can share anywhere.
Randomly showing up for agents, or are you creating a marketing campaign through some of the marketing services like Facebook Ads Manager or whatever Instagram's ad manager is?
So we do certain things to so-called like hack our audience as a way to make it a little bit easier or to create the audience that we want it to look like. However, the easiest way to start and the way we always say to do it, at least for a minimum of 3 months, is to identify 2 pieces of content within these sections and make sure those get posted every week. And so as long as you're doing 2 pieces of curiosity marketing every week, you're going to feel like your engagement is starting to drive up. And so I would say stick to that for the first 12 weeks before you do any paid. Always stick to organic first, so you start to build the habit and let the audience you've already developed have a way to engage with you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Start organic. Once you get the hang of it, then it's probably time to start investing in some of the paid services through those platforms. I think that answered Jeremy's question as well about frequency. So 2 pieces of curiosity marketing per week is what you recommend to start. Cool.
Correct. Yep.
And then Chelsea's asking, when do you sell them the drink?
You sell them the drink when they move along the Casper method, which you'll see.
Awesome. Great questions, y'all. Keep them coming. Let's roll on to the next section, Joe.
Awesome. And so the second part of Casper is appointment. And so appointment specifically in how do you set that up? How do you set up the meeting? There's 4 things you have to know. And when I say agents, I'm talking about everyone. Agents always have a gap. It is very important to understand every single person is recruitable at any point in time. The reason why is because everyone is at this point of their life, and everyone has a point in their life at which they're not at. Everyone has a goal, everyone has a desire, everyone has something that they're moving towards. Therefore, you have a gap between where you're at and where you want to go. So understand every single person in the industry is recruitable at any point in time if they have human psychology. The second part, agents are self-interested. It has nothing to do with what you want, what you care about, or what you feel is valuable. It has everything to do with how much clarity you can help them create with where they're at and where they want to go. And we'll go into what that kind of looks like in questions. Number 3 is agents fear change. They have become complacent with where they're at. And so in order for them to change, there has to be a tried and true reason to where the value of moving surpasses the cost emotionally, physically, financially of moving. So the value has to exceed the cost by a pretty good amount in order for them to overcome that fear of change. And number 4, our agents are content. As we often say, you become content with your problems, not of your pain points. And so the problems that people have in their life, they become content with. Those are just the problems. However, once you identify what the pain points are or what those problems are really looking like, then you can start to create a little momentum or movement. But these 4 things are going to ring true across the board, especially if they've already been in the industry and have a little bit of experience. And so remember this as you go into conversations and know that this is just part of what it looks like. Now, the target 20. So this is something that we talk about often, and you can look at it even in your own business. If you ever had more than 20 leads right now, and you're trying to manage all that and stay up to date and talk to them in any given week multiple times and provide value for them on a consistent basis and know what they want and all that, you'll realize once you go beyond 20, when you're doing it right, it gets really, really difficult. And so the same thing is recruiting. Once you have an idea of you're just opening it up to everyone, or you have more than 20 people that you're trying to go after, it's very difficult to go 100 levels deep. It's not about going so wide. It's about identifying the ones and going deeper. Your goal, I would say, is to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can bring on 3 experienced agents within 90 days. And so the numbers we do are to achieve that. So we identify target 20, we identify 20 people, and then we give ourselves 90 days to bring on 3 of those 20. And once you do that 1 or 2 times, you have enough momentum to where you can automate everything else. And so this is just about getting to that feeling of momentum. And so when identifying that target 20, you select criteria first. Who should even be in my target 20? And so there's a couple things we look at. Number 1 is who's on the other side of your transactions. Everyone you've done a deal with in this year or last year literally got a paycheck because of you. Therefore, you have an intimate relationship already. And oftentimes you didn't really have anything in that relationship beyond that transaction. So what we would often do is we would often backtrack and say that we didn't have the opportunity to take them to lunch or to celebrate. We realize that, and then we will ask for that in the future, or we'll say, how's it been since blank? And so the other side of transactions is a good one to focus on. Number 2 is anyone interacting with you on social media. So notice how we talk about curiosity marketing, if anyone is commenting or sending you a direct message based on your curiosity marketing, they are self-identifying as potentials for your criteria. They are already engaging and interacting with you. You already have their attention. And then previous and current SOI. So your sphere just in terms of the industry. And so if you just happen to know them, they were in a former office, similar brokerage, went to an event together, any of that can all be criteria. Your goal is to identify 20 because of the fact that when you can identify 20, you can fit into the conversions that we talk about of having 3 join within 90 days. And that's why we say it. The audience of who fitting it, what we say is if you can pick your ideal situation, 2 ways to look at it. Number 1, in a perfect world, if they're in the business 3 to 5 years and they're doing 2 to 3 transactions a year, that's probably going to be the easiest person you're ever going to get. Because of the fact that they've tried to figure things out, it's not working. They haven't gotten enough business to love the habits that they have. They've probably joined another team within that time frame and it didn't work out, but they also know the value. The second thing we can also look at is we call it the 10% rule. And the 10% rule is your ideal agent does 10% of the business that you do. And so whatever that looks like, that 10% rule, that's kind of your ideal position to go after, is that 10%. Anything over 20%, we stay away from. What that means is the conversation's going to be more about what you can give them rather than what you can help them achieve. And so as soon as someone's individual production surpasses 20% of team production, we pretty much say that's going to be a major red flag and that their vision is growing beyond the teams. And that's when we have to figure out something to make it work. Then you start creating relationships. You've identified 20, you set your parameters, and now you're creating relationships with them. Please keep it casual. As soon as you bring up business or selling, it's over. As soon as it becomes a conversation on direct message or anything like that, it will surely end and they will build a wall up. Everything until you're connecting with them over Zoom or in person should be casual. And so if you keep it casual enough, you will be able to build trust, build credibility, build that authority. And when you get in person, it's going to be that much easier because they have become more and more curious about your business when you haven't brought it up to them or didn't try to sell them on anything. Remember, make them thirsty. And then when you're with them in person, that's when you'll sell them a drink. And then number 4 is scheduling the meetings. And so setting up the meetings, virtual, in person. And as I said right there, keep everything casual until you meet. And so just to reiterate, you're merely identifying 20 people that fit your parameters of where you're saying they're a culture fit, I want them on my team. You're creating relationships, and then you're just scheduling for coffee or a meeting. The last culture fit I say, if you don't have 10 agents on your team, you really don't have a culture yet. There's not enough to where you can say our culture is this identity. Once you do, that's when it starts to become really apparent. So what we do is if you're under 10 agents, the thing that we say is the flight test. And so can you sit on a 6-hour flight next to this person and not hate it, to actually enjoy it? And so if they can't pass the 6-hour flight test, we probably say they should not even be a prospect or someone who should join your team. And so the 6-hour flight test makes everything a little more real, because when you think about talking to them for 6 hours on a flight next to each other, that's when you get clarity around, are they the right fit or not? Any questions on appointment that came up?
Yeah, we had some nice comments. Chelsea was saying she's getting thirsty waiting for that answer, Joe. So thank you for getting her thirst quenched there. What type of, Justin's asking, what type of metric, such as how number of conversations, appointments set to met to shoot for this target 20?
So that's depending on the person you're identifying. If you already have an established relationship and they have some sort of problem or pain where they're at, it's going to be very quick to, 10 messages back and forth and you could be done. However, some are going to take 2 or 3 weeks of back and forth. The thing I will say is you'll know if you have enough if you've identified 20 people and you're able to schedule 10 appointments with them within the first 30 days. If you're not setting up 10 coffee meetings in the first 30 days, then you're probably doing not enough engagement. or they're not seeing enough in that relationship to where it would make sense for them to meet with you.
Okay, so almost a bare minimum of 10 appointments a month. This is a good starting point to keep it simple, right?
If you can do 10 first appointments in the first month, then you're more likely to be able to recruit 3 within the 90 days.
Gotcha. Love it. Peter asked how to bring offer to join the team in the conversation.
That'll be after strategy.
Perfect. Can you go deeper on, Jason asked, can you go deeper on identifying the prospects whose dreams are too big to join the team?
Yeah, so
great question, Jason.
If we're referencing their dreams are too big to join the team, then I mean, you'll benefit if certain brokerages benefit from like certain things of having downline stuff like that. However, if you're looking at your team, if they're over 20%, that's when we shy away from it because of the fact that it never really goes right. What happens is if they are to ever join, it's usually going to be on a extremely limited split because you're looking at someone who's done it on their own and they've generated really good business. And for them to join you, it's automatically in their mind taking a pay cut. No matter how much business they generate, they're automatically seeing a cost to joining. And so people run from pain, they don't pursue pleasure. And so they'll often talk themselves out of it. So we say the 10% rule or the 20% stay away from, and we say try and stay around that 10% as the framework. Anything over that, you're probably going to want to have a role or something for them to go into. And so we've seen it work to where if someone is above that, they could be a fit for like a sales manager or anything like that. Therefore, they have a leadership role, they have an adjusted split, and they have more power within the team. Besides that, I would say just try and stay away from that 20%.
That's a great point. Great answer, Joe. Thank you. All right, looks like we got the last of the questions covered for appointment. It looks like we keep on moving, Joe. Thank you.
All right, so this is the most important part of everything. It's not the strategy of the entire thing, it's the strategy of what happens when you're in front of them. When we talk about like my past or a 2-to-1 conversion for agents recruiting to a brokerage, it is all linked to the strategy. Nothing else matters. As long as you have a really good strategy, everything else will work itself out. And so there's 2 things that we start with every strategy, and I'll tell you why. Number 1 is, hey, first name, how's your week going so far? This is like our thing that we focus on. When we say, how's your week going so far? They don't hear, how's your week going so far? They hear, what is your last emotional thing that happened to you? And so if they had something happen to them that was really good, then they're having a great week. If they had something happen to them recently that was really bad, they had a horrible week. If you just say how your day's going, they just say good. But if you say, how's your week going so far? They will think back to the last emotional thing that happened to them. And that'll tell you the exact state they're walking into when you're about to meet with them, which is very important because if you know what they're walking in with, you know how to guide your questions. So that's one we look at. Number 2 is I'm curious to hear, and this is a really good one to ask, find out their motivation of why they're meeting with you. It doesn't matter if you already know it. It only matters if they say it, because if they say it, they own it. And so our goal is to understand what was the reason why they're actually meeting with you in the first place. And so make sure those 2 questions are the way that you're starting this relationship. Now, I mentioned before, everything's casual until you connect with them. You can try it any other way, but you'll see what happens when you start talking business and DMs or anything like that. When you keep it casual, you give yourself an opportunity to actually dig deeper with them without them putting walls up. And so then you can actually come to the conversation. And this is one thing I say, now let's talk about you. And that kind of just prefaces that I'd love to just learn about them and understand more of what they're doing. We have something called a top 50 questions. And so we identified 50 questions that gave us the best return. And so our clients operate on the top 50 questions. And so it just tells them like what questions are best to ask that actually open up a gap. For example, one of them is, you shared with me, this is going well. Well, what's the biggest challenge right now? Another one is, what's the next level of success look like for you? If you feel like they're saying everything's good, everything's great, then that is one thing we ask to help them identify where that gap is. Another one is, would you describe your business as growing, declining, or flat? That's a good one. We get a good return in. So all these questions, if you want them, just shoot me a DM and I'll just send them over to you. That'll be the easiest way. Otherwise, you can send an email, but this will be the fastest way that I can get it over to you. When you think about the strategy overall, you're walking in with these questions, these two, to set the premise for meeting with them. Now, the things to remember going into it, one is the rule of three. You can only offer 3 things to them that will not overwhelm them. And so oftentimes when I see people growing their team, a team leader, a CEO, when I see them meeting with people, they often approach it as in like, I'm a doctor and I have all these prescriptions. And so rather than uncovering like what is the specific issue wrong, they're just saying, here's all the different medicines I have, here's everything you can take. And it doesn't really fit what the client is looking for. And so the rule of 3 is the whole point of the strategy is to help identify the 3 pain points that are hurting them right now. So everything we do, all the questions we do are to uncover what are those 3 pain points. If you can identify 3 pain points, then you can prescribe a solution that will resonate with exactly where they're at right now and will highlight the fact that they have a gap and where they want to be. Pain versus problem, don't rely on problems. And so people will say problems all the time. Remember, a pain is linked to either time or money. A problem is just something that they become complacent to. A pain point is directly affecting their time or their money. And so no matter what they say, make sure you're getting the pain point that is directly affecting time or money. And then number 3, what we call us versus them. Avoid brokerage talk. So don't ever mention brokerages. You're going to put yourself in a bidding war. What you're doing is you're devaluing their decision-making skills when you try and sell to a brokerage. Your goal to correctly prescribe is to prescribe your solution, not your brokerage's solution, because then you are just like 100,000 other people, 50,000 other people who can say the same thing. Your goal is to stand out in the market and differentiate yourself. The only way to do that is to only be specific about your unique value proposition. That's why it's called unique. And so avoid brokerage talk, because as soon as you bring it up, you're going to notice a wall go up and you're going to notice that they want to defend that. And so unless there's a big pain point, we avoid it. Number 2 is polarize the enemy. What that means is it's not about where they're at now. It's about we're here and everyone else is over here. And so whenever you reference something about where they're currently at, you just say them, they, over there, etc. You always separate you as one entity and then everyone else combining into another entity. And that's how we say polarize the enemy. So that decision becomes, do you want to join us directly or do you want to go with someone else over there? And that makes it a little easier for them to see how the questions connect. And so with these questions we're talking about, this is the methodology. There's 4 things that have to happen. Number 1 is they have to understand where they're at in their business. You have to ask questions that get them clear on the reality of where they're at. Number 2 is you have to ask questions that help them gain clarity about where they want to get to or where they want their individual business to look like. So you have to help them get clear. Notice I didn't say for you to tell them. You have to help them get clear on where they're at and where they want to go. Once they do that, you want to help them see what the gaps are in the business. Keep in mind, the wider it is of where they want to go, the more gaps that become apparent. Once you help them identify the gaps, then it's about helping them understand that they might not have the solutions to close their gaps right now. And so they might not have the who or what because of the fact that they probably had these gaps last year and the year before, and they haven't been solved yet. And so it's asking strategic questions to help them see where they're at, where they want to go, what the gap is, and how they probably can't solve it right now with their current resources. Now, this is the methodology of which you want to identify 3 pain points. And so everything we do is just to get to that point. Once you find 3 pain points, all this is done. And then you can do the next one, the 4th part of P. Now, strategy is a very in-depth one. And so there's usually questions that come on it because that's the psychological one. The strategy portion, get used to saying a lot of questions that allow them to open up. And so instead of saying, how much volume did you do last year? We would say, would you describe your business as growing, declining, or flat? They're going to have more of an emotional attachment to that. Then if they say it's flat, then we might say, where do you plan for your business to be 3 years down the road? And then they would say some number. Okay, so it sounds like there's a difference of about blank. Yeah, that's the gap. Then we identify the resources. And what stopped you from hitting that business this year? Well, I didn't have this, I didn't do this, etc. The whole conversation is current, desired, gap, and lack of resources. As long as you can ask the right questions, you're going to start to see how they identify their own gaps, and that'll open up the conversation or dialogue to see what you have as a solution. Any questions about strategy? I know there's a lot of content we're putting out.
Yeah, it's a lot of great content, Joe. A lot of chatter. I think we've got a lively group, and I'm absolutely loving that. Having a little fun here. One of the questions was, Coach Joe, how is your week going so far? A little playback to your initial question there to dig into your last emotional response.
Anyone I think who gets like 4 meetings with Mac has a really good week. So I'll answer that way.
Oh, I'm flattered now. And Peter just had a funny comment that I have to share. He said it would be awkward to hear that they thought it was a date. So I don't know if you've ever had any of your clients experience that. That is a funny call out there. And then some questions about sharing those top 50 questions list that I think we've handled. Mark asked if it was okay to DM via Facebook. I would assume that that's okay, Joe, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Justin asked, can you repeat that? Slow, flat. I might have missed that as well, Justin.
What part?
I'm not entirely sure. The 3 areas. Maybe bump back one. Let's see.
Right here?
Rule of 3. Yeah, I think growing, decline, flat.
The question.
Oh, yes.
So the question was, would you describe your business as growing, declining, or flat? And that's to add emotional intensity to it, if that was the question.
Love it. Awesome. And Nadia just mentioned that she loves the polarizing tip, and I agree. You got to be very cognizant of your language too, right?
Correct. You really, with the way our market industry is, with so much happening and so much movement, you really want to make sure that you do everything possible to make this conversation different than the last one. You'll know you have a good conversation when they say, I haven't been asked that, or I guess I really haven't thought about that. As soon as they say one of those two, then you know your conversation is doing what it needs to do, because now all of a sudden they see value in the questions you're asking.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Just a lot of great feedback so far, Joe. No concrete questions, but I'll keep it going. And yep, they're thirsty then. That's right, Chris. And Maxwell
Awesome.
said, them, they, everyone over there equals universal quantifiers. Thank you, Maxwell.
And so Casper, so content, appointment, strategy. Now P is the presentation. So you created content, you positioned yourself well, right? Your content does a lot of the talking for you. And so that's why we make sure we're doing curiosity marketing twice a week. We want something doing a lot of the stuff for us. When we get to the appointment, it's about seeing who's already interacting with it, engaging, seeing who we're connected to so that we can move them along the process. The strategy is about helping them get clarity and then helping them realize that they might not have the answers, because if they did, they probably would have solved their own problems. Now, presentation is the 4th part, and that's about identifying those 3 pain points that they talked about in strategy and then putting those into presentation format. Now, there's 2 ways to look at this. 1 is new agents and 2 is experienced agents. And this will give you context on the difference. New agent appointments are very similar to a come list me call. They need to make a decision. They're just excited for the upcoming opportunity. They're just looking to validate the reason to move forward. They're just looking for things that don't stand out as negative. They're likely to join one of the first two people they talk to. And we just need to focus on the potential with them. Experienced agents are very similar to expired listings. They don't need to make a decision or a move. They've likely already been oversold and underdelivered where they're at. They want to validate reasons not to move forward because now they're more fearful of change. They will likely want to, quote, try it out for 2 years. That's what we hear often after they already made that other decision. And for us, we need to focus on the pain. And so this is the main difference between new agents and experienced. New agents, to become really good at that, there's certain things that your business needs to have. You need to have a lot of automation and systemization. You need added leverage and support from a leadership team aspect or from your sales team. With experienced agents, a lot of it is skill set, and a lot of it has to do with the connections you've already made in the industry. And a lot of it has to do with how well you show or position yourself to others, no matter if it's like events or social media, et cetera. And so new agent, come list me, experience, expired listing. That's the easiest way to look at the difference between the two. Now, if you're looking for new agents, we use Wise Hire usually across the board. And so when you think about the roadmap, if you identified yourself in like a level 4 or a level 3, sometimes a level 5, we're using Wise Hire to hire every admin that we need. And so that's when we're using them to hire everyone that's going to be a support system. Once you get to the end of level 5 or level 6 or level 7, that's where we're running Wise Hire on the back end all the way through. We're hiring them for admin support, but we're also running ads on the back end to ensure that we're attracting new agents as well. Keep in mind, a lot of the new agent stuff is going to be a lot easier. And so our goal is to automate and systemize as much as that. Whereas experienced agents, it's a little more direct. However, the retention's better, the culture, you get more control over it, et cetera. And so when you're looking at new agents or admin, we use Wise Hire for everything. I've done it my personal self. We've over a dozen clients recently in the last probably 2 months have used Wise Hire. And so Wise Hire just makes it really easy. And that's why they're a partner with us today, not because we need them to, but because we ask them to, because this is the easiest way that we do it. It's just the most automated way to where you don't have to worry about putting everything out and hoping for something. Now, for us, you can ignore all this stuff, or you can look at it. But if we get aside from normal jargon, if we get aside from like what should be said or how it should look, the reason why we do things a certain way is because we have good data and tracking within it, and it's extremely simple. And so one of the things we do is if someone has to hire someone, all they do is sign up for 1 month, $179, and we usually hire someone within that month. We write their bio, we do their ad, we do everything for them. And so all they do is fill in some information and they're done. It's already set up and they're running within an hour or so. And so we have that relationship with them. And so we're able to do it. And so if you feel like you're an admin short, or you feel like you want more automation or more newer agents coming on, I highly recommend taking advantage. You can use ours, which is a little bit less per month. The only value, it's not so much the less per month because you're not really paying much at all. The only value I would say is if you want us to like do the ad for you, then just let us know ahead of time and we'll just do it for you so you don't have to worry about it. So we'll just do that as a favor. Otherwise, any admin, any new agents, we recommend going through them because that'll be the easiest way to scale without a headache. Now, when you talk about experienced agents, there's usually 4 things that they're looking for. One is systems, and that's what you're using in your business as a platform, as a process, et cetera. Number 2 is the strategies you're following. We look at 4 very distinct ones. Number 1 is your online leads. Number 2 is your open houses. Number 3 is your database or SOI. And number 4 is your social media. And so we look at those 4 as our big strategies and then how clearly we can articulate those or create a plan, et cetera. The third part is structure. They're looking for structure. When you think structure, I want you to think about how you spend your time or money. Essentially, that is structure. So the fourth one is support, and that's the people that are involved or the virtual assistants involved. Those four things end up being the things that are most asked about or become the solution to what they're looking at. And so know that any agent you're meeting with, especially if they've already done some deals or market share or business, they're looking for those four things for the most part. And this is just a sample value proposition if you wanted to put everything into one category just to have as a visual. And so we often create a visual, whether you're working with new agents, we just put everything together on one kind of document. And then that makes it really easy to articulate everything if there are specific questions. And so we just provided this sample value proposition so you can get a sense of what your team or how you can articulate everything you offer to a prospect. Any questions on proposition or presentation?
I think Mark had a question around what do you mean by running it on the back end? I guess
so Wise Hire makes it really easy to where you set it up really quick and then it'll just keep doing the ads for you. And so over time, within a couple hours, sometimes you're going to start getting all these resumes and they kind of lay it out almost like a Trello board. And so there's not much work that has to be done. You can just revisit it once every 5 days, 7 days or so. And so when I say on the back end, it means there's not much effort at all going into it. It just kind of runs itself. And then you're just looking at who's coming in and do I think they're a fit or do I not think they're a fit? So that's what I mean by on the back end. It's just not taking any time or attention. It just automates itself for the most part.
Yeah, and then we had another question from Michael, kind of pointed to Wise Hire. So it may be good for you, or I know Angela from the Wise Hire team is here on standby as well. What do the numbers tend to look like with Wise Hire in your experience, Joe? In terms of how many resumes to a good hire. So, like, what's the conversion look like? I would assume is what he's getting at.
Yeah, so the conversion is the hard part because of saturation, different markets. In terms of overall, if we take averages across the board and look at what we can expect, it's usually probably going to be around one agent every month to two that ends up joining the team. And so that's kind of like our average that we're seeing. Every 1 to 2 months, we're bringing on one agent. So over the course of a year, it could be, 5 to 10 or 6 to 12 or however you look at it. A lot of it has to do with how you're doing the wording. A lot of it has to do with, what's going on in the area. But for the most part, we see some good things coming in there. I would say there are some that you're scrubbing through that don't really fit anything, but you can probably look at around one every 1 to 2 months or so that you actually see as a fit on your team and you want them.
Awesome. Love it. Let's see. Justin had another question. When do you use the presentation? If we're not looking to sell them, is this in person? How are you facilitating this presentation, Joe?
Yeah, so the strategy is the in-person part or Zoom. The presentation either comes directly after it or 1 or 2 days later. I used to love doing it 1 or 2 days later because I knew that an emotional decision had to get emotional and I wanted them to sit on the conversation a little bit. And so I would just say, thanks for meeting, thanks for catching up. And then I would reach back out a day or two later and just say, I'm still thinking about everything you shared. And the more I think about it, the more I realize there might be a possibility of us aligning and making a win-win. And so for me, I liked having two separate. A lot of times you might go into an appointment, you start asking questions, they start spilling everything, saying everything's wrong. And they're going to ask you, like, what do you do that's different? And sometimes you will have an opportunity to just do everything at once. As long as you still follow the framework of getting to the 3 pain points, then you can either do it at the end of that or in a future in like 1 or 2 days.
Awesome. And just two more. One kind of comment from Jeff. He said he just ran his Wise Hire numbers. There's been a 5% that have ended up on the team, but they're very selective, which is great, Jeff. And then Chris is asking for your opinion of a DISC assessment, as he feels that they use it to sort the agents who fit their culture best.
So I I like the disc assessment, and with Wise Hire, they do it automatically. And so as anyone applies through what they're doing, keep in mind, you're the only one that sees Wise Hire. They're going out and hitting like 100 different sites and pulling them into one platform for you. And so they're not necessarily seeing Wise Hire everywhere. Wise Hire is just working for you on your end by pulling all these different things in, these people in that they're applying to different places. And then what they do is they then send them a disc assessment, and you can see how they compare to the role. And so it won't just tell you their disc, it'll say this is the preferred disc for the role, and then it'll show you how it compares. So I love the disc assessment. I use it for admin and sales, even for us, but especially for teams.
Love it. Awesome. I think that's the last of the questions there, Joe. Thank you.
Okay. And so enrollment is the E part. The reason why we talk about enrollment is because recruiting just got used over and over and over. So enrollment felt better. Everyone's starting to build these online universities and doing all that stuff. So enrollment just felt like an easier way to approach everything. And so this is what we look at. Now, they met with you, right? You guys had some relationship. You did a strategy session with them. You have presented them something. And then what's next? They either end up saying, let's do it, or they say, let me think about it, or something else. And so the path is just a way that you can kind of plug in where you're at. If they say they're not ready now, or they want to move, right? You can combat those objections. If you can't get around them, then it's all about how do you add more value to what they're currently receiving? Because if value has to exceed cost, you have to make sure you at least over deliver value than where they're at, because you have more of a cost if they make a move. And so for what value should you be providing your prospect? We look at something called next step, and STEP, of course, is an acronym, which stands for service, training, event, or product. And it's what service can you do for them? Maybe help them out with something tech related. Maybe you're speaking to their team. Training could be maybe you invite them to a training that you're doing, or maybe you're going to do something else that's training related with them or their team or their community, et cetera. Event is inviting them to an event. Rain is a good one. I think we had 2 or 3 clients go to that one. And then, oh, by the way, Mac, great feedback on Rain from the operation standpoint.
Yes.
I heard about that so much. I don't want to get off topic, but the operations people, I think I heard more from Rain about that than I've ever heard. That was a big thing.
Yeah. We, we put a lot of emphasis on our ops community, Joe, and I don't want to pull you off target, here, but, Rain's a big part of it. We host another workshop called our CISO Mastery Workshop, but, we see our ops people really digging and love CISO.
Yeah, I heard a lot about it. And then P is product. And so what product can you give them? Maybe it's like a listing presentation or some booklet or et cetera. But just think about value in terms of service, training, event, or product, which is STEP. How often should you be providing consistent value? We look at a minimum of 2. And so we look at 2 hours later, 2 days later, 2 weeks later, 2 months later at a minimum. Onboarding, how long is an ideal onboarding process? We like to call it a honeymoon experience. And so that's 7 days at which you can finish all your onboarding. So then you can focus on training, immersion, development, et cetera. And then how do we create a positive experience for the agents? We're going to go over that a little later. For training, what aspects should be focused on first? I would say really focus on buyers. If you have a lot of lead flow, really focus on online leads. The easiest way to think about it is if their business is going to align with the core 4, which is online leads, SOI, social media, and open houses, then your goal is to get them comfortable and clear as you can on those 4 things in particular as soon as possible. The more clear and direction you give them, the more likely it is that they're going to do it consistently over a long run. And how do we monitor agent activities and performance? I would say for us, I would say the messy middle is usually the point at which we have everyone on Sisu. Some join right around like a level 3, and it usually depends on the brokerage they're at or what kind of ops or admin they're dealing with. But usually once they hit like a level 4 for us or a messy middle, that's when we really encourage certain things and we help them set that up and make it as easy as possible. And so I believe for us, the messy middle is right around that 50 million point or 100 transactions. However, I think we have some that are like 20 million right now on Sisu and love it. What does leadership look like once they join? We'll go over a little bit of that, what that looks like. There's a few things you want to make sure you have dialed in so that they feel like they're coming into a team. You want to make sure that, and I don't know if this is in there, you want to make sure that you have your team meetings set up in a way that encourage productivity. You want to make sure that you have standards in between every team meeting. You want to make sure that you have your preferred way of communication clear from the start. So do they text you? Do they call you? Do they email you, etc.? And you want to make sure you have your at least first 7 days of onboarding where you want it. If you have those, you'll be seen as a leader. And then what if I have an agent who is not hitting our standards? We usually give them a first 90 days to get one contract. If they don't do that, then we usually do like a 30-day performance plan. And so we're building out what that all looks like in detail. So that's what I recommend. And the bonus. And so recruiting agents is not the easiest thing in the world, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes as easy as taking a listing. Because of the fact that you're solving something in the market that no one else is solving or the person didn't solve for them. And so once you can solve that, it becomes a lot easier for them to see value. We say a 3-for-1 because once someone joins you, what they did was they severed ties with a former brokerage or leader, and there was other people there that they didn't want to sever ties with. And so as they're joining us on this new journey and as they're really excited, we say, who are 2 people at wherever you are at that you feel would be a perfect fit to join you on this new journey of yours? And so then we try and get 2 more names to turn that 3 from 1. And we let them choose because then it's more likely to be a better conversion. And they're going to kind of talk them up too to join them. Most people don't take the time to ask them or to have them actually look back and see who should be joining them. And so we say it's a bonus, but try and go for that 3 for everyone. With enrollment, any questions at all? We're almost done.
Joe, Jonathan, I think had a question for the previous section, thoughts on the love language test, help you love on the team. I'm not too familiar with that, but curious.
What was the question?
Your thoughts on the love language test. I'm assuming that's some sort of like a personality assessment of sorts like DISC, but I feel like that's for my my spouse, but you know what? It might be good to know. Absolutely.
So the only one I feel is being referenced would be the 5 love languages, which is like, what love language do you align with most, second, third, where it's like physical touch, words of affirmation. For us, we don't really do extra stuff that isn't built in to the methodology. And so we have such a like specific way of doing everything to ensure that we can make clients grow. Our average growth rate right now, I think, is 71 or 73% year over year, and that's average. And so in order to do that, we have to feel like we're only doing things necessary, because if we do too much, people start to see that we're just throwing fluff. So we don't actually use that, but I've heard good things, especially for relationships. We just haven't implemented that the same way as others.
I love it. Great question, though. Awesome. No other questions, though, so far for the previous section, Joe.
Okay. So last one is retention. And so what does that mean to actually get them to join you and then keep them? Recruiting is one thing, retaining is another. We look at the agent experience and we reference 3 or 4 main things. The first 3 are a little more main. The 4th one is kind of like you just have to do it. There's no choice around it. Number 1 is people. And so making sure you have the right people in the right position to help your agents. People are going to be the future of your organization. And so we always look at moving towards three things: more money, more freedom, more impact. More money gives you the ability to focus on sales. More freedom is the result of operations, and impact is the result of experience. So number two is the operations. Understand that systems run your business and people run your systems. People often make a mistake. They hire people to run operations. Your systems run your operations and your people run your systems. Number three is results. Ensure you have a performance-based culture as you continue to grow your team. We would call it a culture of productivity. The best retention you could have is the ability to show someone results. And I say show because that leads into number four, which is tracking. Allow your data to let you decide what you need to do and how you need to do it. The thing I see where people go wrong is they rely too much on their voice, meaning they rely so much on what I'm saying they need to do, or I'm saying this is wrong, or this is right, etc. When you give a visual element to what's happening that makes sense to them, you can coach to the system and not to them. And that allows any kind of negativity in between to subside. Your goal at the end of the day is to help them create results. Oftentimes, they don't have as much clarity as you do to create those results. And so your ability to use results and tracking hand in hand is going to be the way that you can scale without stress or overwhelm. And so people, operations, results, and tracking, and you'll see people where we really rely on WiseHire, operations, results, we really rely on Sisu. And then both of you guys have become really good at tracking, which kind of helps with both aspects. And so that's kind of how we look at everything. Everything we do, it connects. Hopefully there was just something you got out of this. But Mac, I know the big part for you, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The big part for you that we've talked about and has been so critical with everyone that we've introduced you to has been the agent experience part.
Right.
And so talk about that a little bit, because you'll be able to speak to it a little better than I can.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Joe, although you have been talking for the past hour. So I think you've earned and deserve a break. But yeah, Sisu, we often describe ourselves as a real estate operating system, but truthfully, it's a leadership tool. So, in terms of like when you get someone on board, what a lot of Joe is talking about here is like helping them work towards their goals, right? So being able to work with them and host an effective one-on-one with this agent and understand what their personal goals are and defining that in Sisu and being able to reverse engineer it and down to the leading indicators of what they need to do to hit those goals. Really helps refine that process and keep them on track and create those conversations where it's not, about you as the business leader and these agents hitting goals for you. It's always tying it back to their own personal production and business, right? From there, it's, why we love WiseHire so much and getting the right people into the systems. Being an open platform, being able to streamline and create a more efficient, system for your business, managing your transactions, automatically inputting listings through your CRM integration. We could go on for a while, but that last section is really where Sisu comes to my mind as being a key piece of the Casper framework here. So super thankful that you were able to do this with us, Joe, and WiseHire for being involved and bringing their community as well to this. So it's been a super valuable. I know I learned a ton, but yeah, love it, Joe. Thank you again.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Hopefully there was at least something that someone took away, or the importance of once you have a framework and you can follow that consistently, everything else becomes easier. Your ability to scale is going to be directly correlated to your ability to simplify. And the more you can simplify on your systems and your processes and everything, the easier it is for you to scale. When we look at success in general, we say it's very possible to double your business a given year. It's very possible to 3x. We have one more than 3x. just really focus on how do I simplify everything so that I can do the right things at the right time, and I can have systems run my business and people run my systems.
Yeah, love it, Joe. Couple things before we sign off entirely, Joe. Would you mind popping that slide back up just for the contact information again? You know, I think you deserve some recognition. I'd love for people to see where they can get in touch with you. In the meantime, you know, I think the Wise Hire team dropped some information there. You know, I'll take an opportunity to provide a quick shameless Sisu plug. We've got a little link from Coach Joe as well. That our team pushed out. So if you'd like to learn a little bit about, you know, the services that we provide and, you know, how we tie into Joe's coaching frameworks here, you know, go ahead and schedule a demo with our team. We can take you through it all and see if we're a good match. But we'd love to have the opportunity to speak with you as well. But yeah, share that contact information with us one more time, Joe. If you don't mind.
Yeah, let me.
If you haven't already closed it out. Otherwise, we can always chat it out.
Here we go, real quick.
Yeah.
So two things, either email at hello@coachjoe.com or who is Coach Joe is an easy way on Instagram. The who is Coach Joe kind of came as a brand because we are 100% grown word of mouth. We've never paid anything for marketing, but our clients are the ones growing the company massively. And it's all because of the detailed frameworks and the focus on having a methodology for everything we do and a reason, just having nothing to theory. And so hello@coachjoe.com if you want to email, or who is Coach Joe on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook too, and I'll do my best to check that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all the questions about recordings and the slides, we'll be distributing those out after the fact. I know we had a lot of people tune in live, which was awesome to see, Joe. And I know that there were even more that probably weren't able to make it. As we know, the life of a realtor can be one that's in flux schedule wise. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I know I got a ton of value. I'm thankful for our mutual clients that connected us to make this happen, Joe. And looking forward to doing more like this with you in the future, if you're so open to it. But yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Jake, Maxwell, Chelsea, Sisu team, Wise Hire team. Thanks, y'all. We appreciate it. Anything else, Joe, before we let them go?
Take it away.
All right, gang. All right. Well, we'll see y'all soon. Everyone have a great one. Bye, y'all.